work.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica, for that introduction. Good evening, namaste, vanakkam to everyone from everywhere in the world. And a big thank you to Philip Fimano, Leal Coat, and the World Hope Forum, and Monica for giving me this wonderful opportunity to listen to all these wonderful speakers and panelists, and also be able to share my journey my journey with textiles and my journey with cultural sustainability. So let me just quickly share my presentation. Yeah. So, yeah. A little bit to introduce myself. I studied fashion in the Premier Institute of Fashion in India. And when I graduated, I was completely confused with what the Fashion Institute taught me, because I just felt that I didn't know where I was. I mean, I love textiles, but I couldn't understand what was happening. It took me many years of learning with the native craftspeople, eventually, where I actually, it completely transformed me as a person in my journey. And hence I've termed my presentation as Through Our Hands and Through These Threads. And how I understood cultural sustainability, interconnectedness, interdependence, kin and care through this. This is an image of, I may be a little haphazard, but that is how it is. This is an image of a kolam, which is a decoration which is made in our homes, something that my grandmother passed on, or it's passed on through generations. It's made of rice flour, and this is my son doing it a couple of weeks back. And this is basically, you can see the infinite loops in it. And it was done in homes just in order to feed the ants rice flour. You know, so I want to start my presentation with something like that, because cultural sustainability for us is really so core that, you know, when I use it in forums, when I use it in the fashion industry, I find it a little superficial. So I'll go through these kind of instances, you know, because I think my work in sustainability has really been affected not by any, you know, any jargon or how cool it is to be doing, you know, doing work with craftspeople, or doing, you know, doing zero waste or any of that. You know, to be honest, when I was about perhaps my son's age, 8 years or 9 years old, my grandmother once told me that if you don't save water and save the food that you eat, the next life you're going to be born in a desert. And that was really a trauma for me, because I actually visualized myself like that. And I was like, oh my God, you know, that, you know, it stays in your head. And I think, like a couple of the other panelists who mentioned, if you're brought up like that, then, you know, it's just, it's not at a level where you do it intellectually. You do it even in your dreams. If you wake up at 2 a.m. in the night, if someone shakes you up, you will still say, let me not do something absurd. So that is, you know, this is the same thing, that these are the kind of values that I not just learned from my family, but I also learned through my interactions with artisans, especially the textile spinners and weavers who are who form a very large community of people in our country. So this is an image just for you to kind of relate to who I am and who is speaking to you. And these are the images of my, you know, old family photographs, you know, just for you to understand also the dichotomy between all these terms that we are talking about, and, you know, the people who actually were, you know, in families in India who believed that simplicity is the highest form of sophistication, you know. So when I went to fashion school, which was so much about vanity, that also instilled a lot of confusion in my head, because when you come out, you say that, you know, you don't need so much clothes, you don't need to consume. That's how you're brought up. And here you suddenly come out of fashion school and you've got to sell, and you've got to tell people uh, there's a lot of mix of, you know, emotions when one goes through, and I'm so happy that it's 2 decades since then. And today I can actually kind of bring all these things together, you know, like kind of stitch all these things together, which I've learned from various people. I'll show you a brief video which I kind of put together for representing my work with textiles. So, yeah, so in like Kannan and a couple of other panelists mentioned, in our country, the stick with which you drive the cattle is sacred. Thread is also sacred. And anything that you work with is considered sacred. To this day, in every office in India, it doesn't matter whether you're doing fashion or you're an engineer or a doctor, you actually pray to all your tools. You pray to the computer, and there's a day dedicated to that. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because sutra is the Sanskrit word for thread, and thread is really what connects all of us. In fact, sutra is also a term which is, given for the mantras that are passed through generations, you know, which are words of wisdom. And that is how I see all of this, coming together. And if you see a couple of the pictures that I'm sharing of the craftspeople, you would almost think they are in a state of prayer. And these are not kind of manipulated, or, you know, these are not kind of, what do I say, directed. You know, people just are like that because that is the state, and which is why a lot of weavers, a lot of spinners in our country have actually been poets and have been mystical poets as well. They've left words of wisdom that still guide all of us, which is a lot of Sufi poetry and Sufi music as well. Um, the other thing that touches me is that one of the first thing that a child is wrapped is in a cloth, and we all go out in a shroud. It doesn't matter which part of the world we are in, you know, and that's the way I see that there is no separation from cloth. And cloth is sacred in that sense. There's a connection that every one of us, no matter where we are from, whichever region of the world, will feel this. And this does touch us that way. And the whole process of making cloth in hand, cloth by hand, I don't know how many, I'm sure many have experienced, and, it is a slow meditative process, and it is therapeutic, it is healing, it transforms who you are. And I think just by sitting by the people who are, engaged in the process of weaving or spinning, alters your thought. It also alters your pace of mind, and how you kind of operate and, think about the world. So I feel thread is that, in that sense, a connecting, link between so many of us. These are some of the things, and why because of the connection to this, I think in my studio I exclusively use handmade cloth, and more than 90% of it is also hand spun, which is a very difficult thing to find even in a country like India today, because hand spun has become increasingly it's a laborious process, because again, like I mentioned before, it's meditative and it's a prayer. um, it also brings in a lot of other debates and dichotomy, you know, whether such things should ever be even commercialized. Does one need to increase production of hand spun things? Does one need to increase the production of, even craft activities? Because craft activities were always, done in reverence, and it had a lot of other consideration apart from, apart from it being a commodity. So really, in our space, we don't see cloth, we don't see threads as commodities, but we see them as true tools of interconnectedness, and we see them as tools of transformation. We also see cloth as a way of resistance. If one studies the freedom struggle of India, also from the British, cloth played a very important role in our freedom struggle, and the spinning wheel was continues to be a symbol of freedom for India. Uh, Along with hand-woven practices, one of my early interactions was with the craft of kantha. Kantha is a craft from the eastern part of India, which is done by patching used or discarded cloth, and then it is also stitched with used or discarded threads of old saris. This is often considered as a sign of poverty. But one thing that I would like to highlight here is that in our country, it's not really that these things came out of poverty. It came out of a lot of wisdom, and it came out of a lot of sensitivity. And where you're not looking at all resources as infinite, and you look at them as finite, and hence you take care of everything that you are putting out there. These are some of the samples, and I think, even the if you see the tiny tiny stitches out here, they literally are like, the way we breathe in and breathe out, the spaces that we have and the gaps literally decide that. So it's a very internal process. This is the reverse side of the kantha, which I always find very exciting, because I think there's so much that one sees on the reverse side of things. Yeah, now this is all the interventions that my studio, or with me and my craftswomen have done with kantha as a craft, because I think that one of the things that we need to kind of bring hope in this world is to be able to bring some humor. And here we've taken technology, brought technology with kantha, and these are laptops which are designed with kantha screens. This was done for a biennial, for an art biennial. So I just feel that there's sometimes one feels hopeless, and one of the ways I combat hopelessness is with humor. You may see a couple of more examples of this in my presentation. So when anybody visits my studio, we always have these interactions with this, and it's just fun. These are some images of cell phones that we made with embroidery. And one of the reasons, if I may just briefly touch, is that kantha is a craft where women always drew what they saw around them. So when I started working on this craft, I said, why would we draw elephants and peacocks? I said, I don't see elephants and peacocks. I live in Mumbai. And in those years, I was living in Kolkata. So I said, what I see is all this. And it was also a very aspirational craft, as in people drew what they aspired for. So I said, I must draw, if it is cell phones, if it is computers, if it is whatever we see around is what is the inspiration. And that would have more, bring the craft in a space where it's more today's time, rather than let it freeze in some moment in the past. Yeah. Yes, this brings me to another part of our philosophy, which is very deeply ingrained, which is that throwaway was never a part of any evolved human society. On the left side, you can see the image of potato peels. Potato peels is normally discarded. Is normally considered as discards. And on the right side are waste and scraps of my studio. You'll see in the next image. Yes. So this is the image of fermented rice with in the center. What you see is the potato peels, which are shallow fried, and they turn out into the tastiest crispies. And we still practice this. And if anyone wants to ever try, you would know how wonderful these discards are. There are a whole lot of recipes which I have sat and documented. These are recipes from my friends' families, from my family, where we actually kind of have this kind of wisdom, which is not something that has come out of someone's hat today, which is centuries old. And if you see the rice out here, this is leftover rice, which is which is fermented with just 5 mm of extra water left outside in room temperature. And if you Google it, you'll find that it's the most nutritious rice. It's more nutritious than the freshly cooked rice. So you don't refrigerate it, you don't reheat it. It's just left to ferment, and it's probiotic and has wonderful medicinal properties. So I'm just bringing this as an example of how sustainability, or these practices of discarding, is a very new age thing. It is a part of the colonial impact in our country. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say that. I would say that a lot of us in India also live terribly colonized lives today, and we do not follow a lot of these practices. And one of my attempts is not just to do it with fashion, but also with food. Here you can see, this is an image of my mother. She was a wonderful knitter and a wonderful seamstress. She used to use all kinds of things from clothes that we used and made bed sheets out of it. And if you see the image on the bottom, this is a bed sheet made out of my father's shirts. And the image on the top is my daughter wrapping it a few days back. So I just think these are wonderful, wonderful things, because this is not just about saving. It's not about reuse or zero waste. It's such a beautiful thing because my daughter is wrapped with my father's love every day. That's something that's given down, and it doesn't matter whether I get to present it in any forum or not. This is how we live. And it's really special. And what I'm trying to do through my work is to be able to communicate these wonderful emotions to the fashion world, to the textile world. This is an image of me, inspired by my mother, of course. I'm making these art quilts, which are memory quilts, which are made out of scraps of my own work in my factory, I wouldn't call it a factory. I think it's a really tiny micro studio of less than 10 of us working. But yeah, so these are images of the work that I put together. And I credit my forefathers, my ancestors, craftspeople for giving me the sense. Otherwise, I would have been, I don't think I had any hope. So, yeah. And this is just, a reminder that, textiles carry memories. They carry memories of the makers. They carry memories of the users. They also carry energies. So we have to be very careful when we make something and put it out there. We have to be careful how we use them as well. This is an image of upholstery that I make for chairs in collaboration with some furniture companies as well, inspired by the same method. And there is a lot of memory attached to all of these things. Yeah, and yeah, so this something where I've said about the unlike is joined together, and from the difference results the most beautiful harmony. I find this as something that also gives me a lot of peace when I read something like this, and direction when I'm making clothes thereby. These are the leftovers that are neatly arranged in my workshop, ready to be made into something else. And I would say here that, when you grow your own food, you're really careful. You love every part of the tomato. You love every part of the pumpkin. You don't want to waste anything because you saw it growing from that little. It's the same thing when you're involved in the weaving or the spinning process. It's like your little baby. You don't want to even waste a little nail of it. You say, let me do something out of it. So it's just pure love. It isn't any whatever. It isn't any kind of righteousness in this. Yeah, these are the other kind of work that I have done with patchwork textiles. The other thing that I have learned over the 2.5 decades of working with clothes is that when you own imperfections, you're gentler on the earth. I think somebody else also mentioned on this panel that, the fashion industry suffers from, being correct all the time. So I think owning the imperfections is beautiful. It lets you be yourself. It lets you be. So these are some other images of my work. One of the projects that I also started in my studio was called Slow.Useless. This is something to counter the fast-paced world of us, where we are working with slow processes and discarded material. And that was a way of documenting different kinds of things. Like you can see here, these are patchworks of different ways in which we brought the geometry together. Nature, of course, is something that I learned the most from. I think anybody who is into cultural sustainability or interconnectedness would completely resonate with this. And yeah, this is something that I would just briefly mention. There are so many things, and I'm so excited about that. This is Kala cotton. Kala cotton is an indigenous cotton from India, which is rain-fed crop. Does not require any water, does not require any fertilizers. It just grows on its own. And it's wonderful that there are some crafts groups that have brought it back. And I feel really proud that my studio, being just of 10 people, we've been using Kala cotton for more than a decade now. They're a very small community of people who are able to grow this cotton, but it is growing strong. So yeah, there is some hope. This is also some pictures of the kind of pintux and the kind of irregular lines, organic lines that I take inspired from nature. These are images of, collections, but just to, like everything that we use in our studio is handmade and hand spun, and it's handcrafted. Yeah. That is Monica wrapping one of my art textiles in her first visit to my home/studio. And I must say that it was quite a wonderful experience meeting her. And she was one of the first persons to actually tell me, or, kind of make me realize that there's something deeper that I'm working on than just fashion. Yeah, so this is an image. I just brought it out because the first time she came home, we actually had a meal on a banana leaf. Again, I'm bringing back. These are practices that we still have. This is another festival we had 2 months back at a friend's house in Mumbai, and people still eat on banana leaves when it is festivals or in weddings, because not in every part of India, but in many parts of India. And this is considered as something which is, of course, because it is directly, it just goes straight to the soil. You don't have thermocol plates. You don't have save the world, save the soil, save plastic, save this, save that. There's no saving anything. You just listen to your grandmother and you're saved. It's as, it's as, like straightforward as that. And I think these are things that we also take for granted, because we live it like this. We don't even think much of it. We just say, that is how you are. Yeah, the other thing I would touch upon is, which I think is really important for hope in this world, is to bring back the feminine, animistic, raw, real energy, because we've somewhere become too polite, too nice, talk sweet things, but do horrible things, go shoot children, take over native lands, do the worst things, and yet look really nice. So I kind of am very inspired by this goddess in India, who's called Kali. Kali, someone, if you look up, you will know she's a goddess who, kind of destroyed the evil and, and I think there's something wonderful. I'll share a few more experiences when I'm talking about animistic out here. One of the ways in which in our society we connect with nature is that we don't think of her as different from us. We think of her as one. I will tell you one really funny experience. To the left, you will see this image of a jackfruit tree with a sandal on it. And this is a real experience in our homes. When a tree doesn't fruit, people would say, my aunt would say, you have to just hang a sandal on it and abuse the tree. Like you have to just go and, say a couple of bad words, insult the tree and tell him that him or her, that you're completely useless. And you won't believe it actually fruits. And this is not an image that I got from my old aunt. It's an image that I got from a friend who is a naturalist, who is into biodiversity, and I spoke to her about the World Hope Forum today, and I said, what a pity I don't have an image of the sandal on the tree. And she was kind enough to send me this morning, because this is part of her farm, and she said it absolutely works. So I think it's really sweet, it's endearing when you connect to nature like that. On the right, you see me holding this white pumpkin, which grew in my little patch of garden. I didn't sow it. It just happened because all the waste that you compost at home is put into the garden, and things just grow like that. So it's uh, these are just images of my team, because I shared so much of my work. I thought I must share some images of people who are of the people who are making all this happen. I also think we need a healthy day, the dose of playfulness for hope in this world, because we all get sometimes too serious. So one way I think is to just kind of break that tedium and break the boredom. These are some images of the work that I have done years back. And again, here, if you see the playfulness, we've worked with when the embroidery machine doesn't work properly, so these stitches are actually irregular because the machine is not working correctly. So that was part of our playfulness. So these are a couple of more images that I have shared, and yeah, so there is, I think everywhere that you can see out here is the inspiration that I get from nature and from people and from the knowledge that has passed down through generations. This is the way I've used color in my studio, where we've taken colors of the sea and used it to create a weave. If you see, there's almost a poetry of textures that has come with just that. These are like 13 colors that have been woven into a single meter of fabric. And I think that's one of the things that only handlooms can do, because if you try to imitate this in a power loom, would be quite difficult to do. I use flowers also for dyeing, dyeing cloth. These are cloths that is dyed with natural flowers and barks of trees or plants. This is with rose petals. This is with marigold flowers. This is with rose petals again. This is with iron and pomegranate and indigo. Yeah. So this is, I mean, just to briefly touch, I think the sari is also something that, that I create. And I think it's a wonderful example of a zero waste and also a living garment that continues to be there in India, because it's a single rectangular piece of cloth, and that doesn't need any cuts, and that can be used in several different ways. And these are some images of saris being used for more than, it's just as a reminder that it's a living garment that has survived almost 5,000 years. It still is there as a garment in our country. Yeah. I also would like to share out here the enormous difference that what motherhood has done to me as a creator, because I think women often undermine that role as a creator, and I would just like to touch on that. This is my daughter wearing a sari. This is the victory of Ram over Ravan, which is the good over the evil. This is, I feel that there is hope when we kind of, do things from the heart and not intellectually. There's a lot of things that I've shared. I would, kind of just end it with a little few words that I had, read somewhere, which said, "We alone can devalue gold by not caring if it falls or rises in the marketplace. Wherever there is gold, there is a chain, and if your chain is gold, so much worse for you. Feathers, shells, and C-shaped stones are all as rare. This could be our revolution, to love what is plentiful as much as what is scarce." I would like to end my presentation with that. Thank you so much for your patience and for listening to me.
We've been definitely drinking your words. beautiful choices of words continuously. I mean, words as beautiful as images. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
wonderful work, as we have all seen. I think we need